Update. At Dad's while reading, they laughed at me, then my son revealed a secret that made everyone go silent. Where did you get that? I asked, voice trembling, my hand shaking as I gently touched the envelope. Lily turned to me, her eyes clear and steady. The last time I visited Grandpa, she said, he gave it to me and said to keep it safe. He told me to give it to Mr. Donald if people forgot something important. No one said a word now. Meredith tried to maintain her composure, but I could see her lips pressed tightly together, her face growing pale. Uncle Martin leaned forward, and Edward slowly set his phone down on the table. Mr. Donald took the envelope with both hands, his face showing a mix of caution. It was like he was holding something far more precious than any ordinary legal paper. He shot a look at me, then over to Lily, before he carefully started to open the envelope. Inside was a small black USB drive and a folded note, also handwritten, signed at the bottom. He skimmed the lines briefly, then looked around the room. When he spoke, his voice no longer carried the tone of a lawyer doing his job, it sounded like someone holding a secret too heavy to keep. This is a video recording made by Mr. Harold Jefferson prior to finalizing his last will. He left instructions that it should only be played if the reading of the will became contentious. He paused, then added, and I believe today meets that condition. Meredith let out a short, bitter laugh. This is absurd, she said, her voice higher than usual. A video of unknown origin has no legal standing. Uncle Martin jutted his chin. There's no proof it wasn't altered. Harold never mentioned this to me. But Mr. Donald was already on his feet, walking to the laptop on the side table. He plugged in the USB and within seconds, a single video file opened. On the screen appeared my father, Harold, seated at his desk in the familiar study. He wore the light brown cardigan I had given him years ago. His silver hair was neatly combed, and his eyes looked straight into the camera. The room went completely still. I felt the world freeze as my father's voice came through, hoarse but clear. If you're watching this, Karen, it means things didn't go as I hoped, and I'm sorry. I turned to stone. His voice continued, slow and steady. I know you're being left out of the will, and I agreed to it at the time, thinking it was the right thing to do. But the closer I got to the end of my life, the more I reconsidered, and I realized I was wrong. Wrong to believe what others told me. Wrong not to ask you once why you left. I couldn't hold back the tears. Beside me, Lily clutched my hand tighter, as if she'd always known this moment would come and had waited until I was strong enough to face it. I met Lily, he continued, his expression softening. She didn't say much, but when I asked her about you, she said Mom is the safest place in the world. The murmurs behind me faded. I heard only his voice, the voice of a man I believed would never understand me, now admitting fault, calling my name with a tenderness I thought had vanished forever. On the screen, my father's face, Harold Jefferson's face, looked both foreign and heartbreakingly familiar. He no longer had the stern expression I remembered. Instead, he looked gently tired, like someone finally releasing a weight he had carried too long. Karen, he said, his voice rougher and deeper than I remembered. If you're watching this, then the will didn't go as planned, and maybe that's my fault. I felt frozen. My hands were numb from gripping Lily's so tightly. The room was silent, pulled into every word echoing from the tiny speaker. For years, I let pride and anger drown out everything, he went on. I believed Meredith when she said you left to avoid responsibility. I trusted Martin when he said you'd turned your back on the family. I didn't ask. I didn't investigate. I just closed the door, and because of that, I lost you. Those words cut like a blade, but the kind that peels away the layers I'd built to survive since walking out of that house. When you came back holding Lily, he said, I remember looking out the window. I saw you standing in the rain. I saw the look in your eyes, and I still didn't open the door because I thought I was right. I thought you owed me an apology. I heard Meredith shift slightly in her seat. Brandon lowered his head. Uncle Martin crossed his arms, his lips pressed into a hard line. They were trying to stay composed, but none of them could ignore the truth unraveling in my father's voice. And now, looking back, he continued, staring straight into the camera, like he was speaking directly to me. I see it clearly. You were the bravest one in this family. You left when there was no other choice. You protected your daughter. You stood on your own after everyone turned away. You didn't come back for money. You came back because you deserved to hear what I should have said a long time ago. I couldn't stop the tears. They fell silently, not in a rush, but steady, like every year of pain was finally being washed away. I'm proud of you, Karen, he said, his voice dropping low, thick with remorse. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry for making you believe you weren't enough, weren't worthy, weren't loved. The truth is, you made it through all of it with your heart intact. Lily looked up at me, her clear eyes pulling at something deep in my chest. I wanted to hold her close and cry, but I stayed still. My father wasn't done. And because of that, he said, I revised my will, one final version sent directly to Mr. Donald, fully executed and legally binding. The air in the room thickened. I leave this entire house to you, Karen, he said, along with my savings account, retirement stocks, and a scholarship fund for Lily. I want her to have the chances you didn't. I heard someone inhale sharply, maybe Edward, maybe Meredith. Uncle Martin leaned forward, clearly about to object, but Mr. Donald raised a hand to keep him quiet. I know this will upset some people, my father said, as though reading their reactions through time. But I'm not doing this for fairness. I'm doing this for truth, and the truth is, you deserve every good thing I can leave behind. The screen began to fade to black, but before it disappeared, he looked into the lens one last time, his gaze softening, exactly like the way he used to look at me when I was little and scared of summer storms. You are my daughter, he said gently. And I love you. I always have. I just didn't know how to show it. Live well for yourself and for your daughter. Don't let them take your heart again. The screen went dark. No music, no effects, just silence, deep and heavy like a final confession. I sat there, still clutching Lily's hand. Inside me was a storm, not of rage or regret, but of something I hadn't let myself believe in for years. My father had heard. My father had seen, and in the end, my father chose me. The room sat in thick silence after the screen went black. No one moved. No one breathed too loudly. Everyone seemed frozen between two worlds, one filled with the cold calculations they'd just been discussing, and the other where the truth had just thundered in like an unexpected winter storm. Meredith was the first to break the silence. Her chair scraped back, suddenly screeching across the floor. Her face was pale, but her eyes still clung to the last shreds of pride. No, no way, she said, her voice shaking but clipped. He never changed the will. I took care of him. I was with him until the very end. No one replied. Brandon stood up more slowly, trying to place a hand on her shoulder to calm her, but Meredith shoved him off without a word. She stormed toward the door without even glancing at me. The door slammed shut behind her, leaving behind a cold emptiness in the space where she had been. Final update. At Dad's while reading, they laughed at me, then my son revealed a secret that made everyone go silent. I didn't feel triumphant, just quiet. Uncle Martin, still seated, stared at the USB as if it were something that could bend reality. He turned to Mr. Donald, voice low, intense. How do I know that video was real? He could have recorded it before he started losing his mind. Mr. Donald calmly sat back down, both hands resting lightly on the table. The video was recorded 2 weeks before Mr. Harold passed away. It is time-stamped and legally notarized. Additionally, I was present when he signed the revised final will. Uncle Martin clenched his jaw, clearly trying to find an angle to argue, but there was nothing to hold on to. Everything was legal. Every word my father had spoken in the video, and every portion of the estate that had been reassigned had been thoroughly processed within the bounds of the law. It was strange that a man like him, so quiet, so disciplined, chose to end it all with such a dramatic twist. Edward, my cousin, who had once looked at me with thinly veiled contempt when I walked in, now sat frozen like a statue. I glanced over at him, and saw his face caught in a storm of emotion, part disbelief, part confusion that my father, the man they all assumed had taken their side, had ultimately chosen mine. I never thought he'd really go through with it, Edward muttered, not really sure who he was talking to. Then he got up, snatched his coat, and quietly slipped out of the room. Nobody made a move to stop him. A few other relatives trailed after him. There were no remarks, no goodbyes. Just their silent backs as they walked away, leaving behind empty chairs, like mute witnesses to a truth that could no longer be ignored. I stayed seated, still holding Lily's hand. She didn't say anything, but I could feel her relief. She'd held onto this secret longer than I realized, and now she could finally exhale. Only the three of us remained in the wide room, me, Lily, and Mr. Donald. Mr. Donald gently closed the folder. His voice deeper now and softer. The revised will is going to be sent to each involved party, along with documents confirming its legal validity. There will be some paperwork to sign, but everything is already arranged. I nodded, unable to find any words. I thought I'd feel pain or anger, or the urge to scream at the world for all the years I was left behind. But I didn't. What I felt was peace, not the hollow kind of silence I used to endure during long nights in the cramped apartment while Lily cried, not the awkward hush at family gatherings where no one spoke to me. This was a quietness filled with resolution, the kind that only arrives when the truth finally speaks. I looked around the room, where my father once wrote meticulous notes, fixed the old wall clock, folded paper airplanes for me when I was little. This room, which I thought no longer belonged to me, had opened its doors again. This time not to shut me out, but to welcome me back. Thank you, I said to Mr. Donald, my voice soft but firm, not just for doing the right thing, but for listening to him. He offered a faint smile, stood up and left the room, with footsteps as light as the change that had just taken place. Lily looked at me, her eyes shimmering with something I hadn't yet put into words, maybe pride, maybe relief, or maybe a new kind of belief that no matter how long it takes, the truth always finds its way. The room now held just the three of us, me, Lily, and Mr. Donald. The late afternoon sunlight streamed through the large window, casting a golden hue across the wooden floor, warming a space that once felt unbearably cold. I stayed seated, as if my mind hadn't yet caught up to everything that had just happened. I had been given the house, once a place of rejection, the savings account, the college fund for Lily. The entire estate everyone believed would go to Meredith was now mine. But what I walked away with from that reading was worth far more than property. It was recognition. The revised will goes into effect immediately, Mr. Donald confirmed once more, noticing I hadn't spoken. If you need any legal assistance, I'm here to help. I nodded, managing a faint smile in place of words, but my throat was tight. All my life, I had longed to hear one simple thing from my father, that he believed in me, that I was worthy of love. And now I had that, not in words alone, but in undeniable action. A video, an apology, a rewritten will. All of it was my father's way of saying I saw you. I looked down at Lily. She was still sitting quietly, her small hand in mine, her wide eyes taking in the dust-laced corners of the room, like she was trying to remember every detail. You did good, Lily, I whispered, my voice trembling with emotion. Thank you. She tilted her head and smiled. I just wanted you to hear him. I brushed her hair gently. You kept a really big secret. Lily nodded proudly. He said to wait for the right moment. I thought today was it. I couldn't help but laugh through my tears. My daughter, just 8 years old, small and silent, had carried an entire truth for months, only to bring it into the light when no one could deny it anymore. Not Meredith, not Uncle Martin. No one could take that truth from her now. I stood up, the weight on my shoulders falling away. No more shame, no more fear or second guessing. I moved slowly across the room, glancing at each chair, remembering every look that once held contempt. Now those eyes were gone, leaving behind a silence big enough to echo the truth. As we stepped outside the grand doors, the setting sun bathed the stone steps in gold. A cool breeze passed by and I shivered, not from cold rejection, but from the gentleness of spring's first wind, a breeze that hinted at something new. I paused at the top of the steps, gazing at the house that had once only symbolized pain. Today it was no longer a place I'd been cast out of, it was where my father called me home through his final will and his final words. "Do you want to see Grandpa's room?" I asked Lily. She squeezed my hand, eyes sparkling. "Do you?" I thought for a moment, then nodded. "Yeah, but not today. Today I just want to go home with you." We stepped off the porch together. I looked back once more, then exhaled deeply. Everything that needed to be said, he had said. Everything that needed to be done, he had done. The rest was mine to carry. The small car waited by the curb, sunlight glinting off the windshield. I opened the door for Lily, and she climbed in with a lightness that said she had laid down a heavy burden. I walked around to the driver's side, and slid into my seat. As the engine turned over, I caught a glimpse of myself in the rearview mirror. My eyes still misty but no longer sad, steady, free. I once walked away from that house in tears and loneliness. Today, I walked away with my daughter, the truth behind me and the future ahead. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the one left behind. I was the one who had been seen. Karen journeyed through pain and silence to reclaim herself and the truth. Her father's long overdue acknowledgement wasn't just a gift, it was proof that strength and dignity are never in vain. In real life, Karen's story reminds us, even when misunderstood or rejected, your worth isn't defined by momentary approval but by your courage to live honestly, love yourself, and trust that truth will one day rise. What are your thoughts on Karen's journey and the choices she made? Share with us in the comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful, emotional stories about family and life.